Hey everyone, Dragon Lord Jonark, welcome back for another campaign diary. This is our most recent one. We ended right after they had killed and defeated all the animated objects. And so now in the aftermath, they continue through the mansion, and they come to a room with two sphinxes, an andro sphinx and a gyno sphinx. Now it's basically just a male and female sphinx. Each one had different challenges, and I told the players that after someone rolled a successful history check, a high level, I think it was a nat 20 history check, I explained to them that the andro sphinx tests might, and the gyno sphinx tests knowledge. And after this, I left the room to go use the bathroom. And I came back and I overheard the players discussing, okay, well, what's your bonuses in strength? What's your bonuses in intelligence? And they were basically compiling a giant list of everybody's abilities and modifiers in the various, kind of in combat related skills and in intelligence such things related skills. And it was really cool to watch them debate this. And they spent about almost 10 to 15 minutes just discussing which one they would choose. And finally they said, you know what, we have more smart people here at the moment simply because Brayden and Hazel were missing. Well, no, Hazel was there. It was Sydney who was missing. And so they're missing a lot of their bronze in this campaign. You're missing, your barbarian with executioner and your Astor the paladin. So they were missing a lot of firepower. And so I think if they had had them, they would have gone for probably the andro sphinx, as it was a pretty close tie. But they had more just with those people who we had Esther, we had Sonia, we had Hazel, and we had Danny. And with those people, they were more intelligence, charisma, wisdom focused, and therefore they felt more confident going that way. And so sure enough, they went with the gyno sphinx. And I think they had a good quest. First, it asked them to reveal some secrets and reveal some knowledge to her. And finally it said, all right, now you need to go to this town nearby. I need to go to the library. And in the library, you will find a shrine to Gillian, god of knowledge. Sacrifice a piece of knowledge to him, and he will grant you one in return. Ask him for information on mechanics so that I may expand my own knowledge. And so sure enough, the party left. They go to the mansion. They had to do some survival, and they had to track down this city that she talked about. And it took them a little bit. They went east as I instructed them, but upon reaching a road that went southeast, they're like, nah, we're just gonna go straight east. And they got kind of lost until they found a hunter who was like, yeah, just head south. And upon hearing that, Sonia was just like, ugh, I knew we should have taken the road, but no, we didn't take the road. Dang it. Whatever. But they come to the city, and they come find a library pretty easily. And then sure enough, they get in, and they find this shrine. And this was the cool part. This, again, was another place where they had a great moment of discussion. So they're like, all right, now we need to sacrifice knowledge to this guy. And so they started thinking, okay, what can I... And they said, all right, what could we do? What could we count as a sacrifice of knowledge? I'm like, well, you could do a story, a book, really anything could, if you can justify it, could be a symbol of knowledge, a sacrifice of knowledge. And so one girl, Sonia, she took her Fritzolas militia, her Fitzherbert militia badge, and she put it on the altar, and she said, what if I sacrifice this? I said, justify it. She's like, well, this badge represents all my knowledge of Fitzherbert, of our time with him. And I said, would you be willing to sacrifice that knowledge? You would forget everything you had done concerning your adventures, concerning Fitzherbert, Bartholomew, this entire thing. And she's like, would I be able to remember them? Would people be able to tell me? I said, no. You would never be able to remember this stuff again. It would never stick in your memory. And she's like, no. Oh gosh, no. No, I would never forget this stuff. I said, all right. Then it wouldn't. Then she's like, all right. She's like, I take the badge back. And then at one point, Esther, my sister, she got sly, and she's like, I'm going to put my extra short sword on the altar. I was like, would you be willing to sacrifice the knowledge of how to make a short sword for every creature in the world? And she's like, maybe. And everyone's like, no. And I think Danny, he took it off. He's like, no, we're not doing this. No, bad idea. And finally, Hazel, she's like, I'm a bard. I bet you I know some stories. Stories are knowledge. I said, okay, that's fair. She's like, I'm like, all right, would you be willing to forget all knowledge of this story? She's like, yeah. I said, all right, tell me a story. She proceeded to tell the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And after which I explained, okay, you tell this story and you find yourself disappear. And everyone's like, wait, where'd you go? And I said, I talked to Hazel. I turned to her and I said, okay, Hazel, you find yourself in a study, a small study, similar to the size of the room we're in. And it is just lined with books and bookshelves and volumes and knowledge, and you can even see little characters, little alphabet characters float through the air, as if the air itself is saturated with knowledge. And Hazel's eyes just light up. Hazel's a nerd. She is a huge nerd, as most of us are, but she is a huge, like, school nerd. And she is just beaming in this. I'm like, and I described it and I felt decent detail. I said, across from you see a man sitting at a desk. He's an older man, like, look, in his 40s or 50s. He's wearing robes, and behind him a fireplace, and he's jotting down, he's copying from a book onto a piece of parchment. He looks up and he says, welcome, thank you for, he says, what a wonderful story. And he stands up, he comes run over, and he walks over, and I, at this point, got up from my chair. I walk over to Hazel, and I like look down on her, kind of as he would look down on, I don't say want to look down, but I would look at, kind of, just look barely down on her, and I said, are you ready for it? And she just nodded, and I tapped her forehead, and I drew it, and I said, he taps your forehead, and draws from this silvery string, and I kind of said, like, drawing the memories from Harry Potter that they would put in the bowl. And everyone's just kind of like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And Hazel is just basking in this. And I explain, yes, I assume you want something in return. She explains, yes, I'm looking for information on Mechanus. And it was like, very well. He gets up and he goes over to the shelves and he starts scrolling through the shelves. Like, not, oh, he's browsing the shelves. Like, no, he went to a shelf, an individual, like, little shelf, and he scrolled through it. As he would brush it aside, the books would disappear into the one end of the shelf, and new ones would appear, as if he was, like, scrolling through a giant wheel of books. And everyone was kind of like, wow, this is pretty cool. And Hazel is just loving this. And sure enough, he pulls a volume from the shelf and he hands it to her, and he's like, best of luck. And he smiles. And I wanted him to be kind of this nice guy. And she really enjoyed it. And she disappears. She reappears with the book. And they're like, all right, let's go back to the Sphinx. And meanwhile, she reads all about Mechanus. And I explain at the end, like, you now have a comprehensive knowledge of the realm of Mechanus, which is an entire plane basically by itself. I think it's just like a section of one of the different dimensional planes. But that was it. And sure enough, they get back to the Sphinx, and she offers the Sphinx the knowledge, and the Sphinx just takes the book and puts it behind its back, and says very well, and it opens the door on the opposite end of the room, and they all enter, and sure enough, they find themselves, like, in another study, which I think maybe I was getting a little too many bookish on this, but I think it was okay. And there's a halfling, and the halfling, basically, they find out the halfling actually worked for Fritzolas in times past, realized his evil, but was still granted one of the keys to the hut where the phylactery is hidden. He's like, hey, go ahead, you guys, I want you to have this. And I use the phrase, like, end this world of the evil that is the Lich. And that's important, because that came up later. I later repeated that phrase, and I did it so it would create kind of this recurring theme. And so they leave, and they go, and they're like, all right, well, now we've got to figure out where this frozen forest is. And so he perks up. She's like, wait a second, we just talked to, like, a halfling who clearly is very well read. So they went back in the mansion. They said, okay, halfling, where's this frozen forest? He's like, just go north. I'm like, all right, so they went north. And I had to roll a couple survival checks. They had to spend the night at one point. They did not have any random encounters, but they came to this forest, and they, due to a nat 20 survival and a nat 20 perception check early on, as they just stumbled across the forest, they knew instantly where this tree was, this one living tree. And I had them go there, and they come to the tree, and here's all these sprites that, like, surround them, as this is the one living tree in the frozen forest, and so all the sprites there are protecting it. But I tell them, like, you notice the tree is wilting, though, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, and everyone kind of freaks out. I won't say freaks out, everyone's like, oh, okay, we gotta help this tree. And so you go up and you inspect the tree, and you find a riddle, like, engraved magically into the bark. The bark is, like, almost woven to write out this riddle. And I said, that which I fear, that which I embrace. And I left him for a while. I just left the room for a couple minutes, took care of a couple other things I had to do, while I let them stew on that. And they spent, I think, 20 minutes on this riddle. And about at the 15-minute mark, they're like, Peter, we have no idea. They threw off, they're like, magic, and they're like, our fears. That was one thing they really thought was it. They were like, our fears, that which we fear, that which we have to embrace. They were like, oh, we have to embrace our worst fears, which I like the thinking, but it was wrong. And so I said, all right, I said, Danny, roll me an insight check. And he rolls me an insight check, and I think he rolled like a 19. Plus, he's got good insight. So he had like a 24 or something like that insight check. And I said, you realize, you have kind of this idea comes into your mind that this was written by Fritzolas. So this is Fritzolas talking. That which I, Fritzolas, fear, that which I, Fritzolas, embrace. And Danny thought about this for another couple of minutes, like another minute or so. And he's like, all of a sudden, death. The answer is death. And I'm like, the tree shudders as if something from inside is pushing. And out of the tree's bark emerges this yellow orb, like the third key. The first key from the wife was this red little orb. The key which the halfling gave him was this blue little orb. And so finally this last one was this yellow orb. And that was, thought it was kind of cool. And the players were like, oh my gosh, and like, do we notice any difference in the tree? And it's like, the tree's gonna be okay. There's not too many visible signs, but the tree's gonna be okay now. And everyone's like, woohoo, yeah! They're like, all right, let's go back to the hut. They knew where the hut was from memory, so they go back to the hut. Instantly, Galen's there. He's like, hey, guys, they'd left him, they had left him there to kind of guard the hut to make sure nobody, went in or out. And so, sure enough, they placed the keys in there. The door shines, materializes, then just vanishes, leaving this stairwell. And they entered the stairwell, and they're like, all right, let's do this. And this is where I had a bit of a mistake on my part. I had originally designed this dungeon here. They would enter almost like this weird lab living quarters. There would be a potion room, there would be an experimentation room, there would be a study, there would be a bedroom. It was clearly supposed to be Fritzolas's living space as he's researched his way to become a lich. And in the back end of it, they would find this big, giant, ceremonial room where they would find this, inscribing that would be, clearly the ritual circle for becoming a lich and some stuff like that. And then there would be a hole in the wall that would lead them deeper into the actual dungeon where they would find the Phylactery. Well, I totally spaced it due to opening up to the wrong page in my notes first. So they entered the dungeon first and started diving into that and haven't even gotten to the living quarters first. But I realized later, I said, hey, that's okay. I can just swap out some stuff. I can take the living quarters, I can insert them at the end of the dungeon, and I'll put the Phylactery room, which was supposed to be at the end of the dungeon, I'll just put it at that hole in the wall in the very back of the living quarters instead. And that's something you got to learn as a DM, is to be flexible. You made a mistake, but you still want everything to be in there, so you learn to rearrange or to take something that didn't happen and you put it later on so it still happens, but without railroading your players. And that's when that's very important. Don't railroad your players. But so sure enough, they dive into the dungeon and they go in and they dive through the first floor, and they kind of miss a couple of things I wanted them to kind of see. I put in there nothing serious. There was a pile of bones that was clearly some old adventurers that tried once and had failed and so died there. There was one room where there's an Odiug, a little rot monster, if you will, that had a key that's useful later. It's not necessary later, but it's the way in order to get towards deeper in the dungeon, in order to get to the end, they'll possibly need this key, so they missed that, so they may have to backtrack for it. But they pass through the first level of the dungeon, they come to the second level, they come to a circular room on the second level, and they see 8 whites, 8 rights, tough zombies. That's whatever they call it, I can never pronounce it. They see 8 of them, and this is something I had really cool, is I had the 8 of them, even though they were all tough, I had them act in unison. And so they would all move in at the same time and they all act the same way. And damaging one would cause the same damage to appear on all of them. So one guy, Danny, he throws a fireball. He manages to catch one of the creatures on fire, and all of a sudden all 8 of them burst into flames. And everyone's like, this is so cool, this is so much fun, it's kind of hard, it's kind of annoying, but this is fun. And that was what was important. It was fun. And so they beat it fairly quickly. Once they realize the trick, they're like, all right, we got this. And so they kill them all fairly quickly, and they move on, and then they come to a room, and they say, all right, we're going to go left. And they come to a room, and this is something, again, where I failed. I was going to have them, they entered this chapel, and the idea was the chapel was, it was supposed to be an altar at the end with a sun blade holding in the altar, and this was supposed to be for Aster, the sun paladin, basically. But Sydney wasn't there, so I was like, oh crap. I'm hoping that when she shows up, because she'll be like, oh, I totally want that sunblade. But they're gonna have to walk past these statues, which all shoot these fireballs at them. Well, I didn't think about math, so I'm like, oh, you walk past the fireballs, everyone roll me dex saves. And I had the fireballs deal 2d10 rather than just 1d10. And there were 6 of these statues shooting fire at them. So basically everyone took 6d10 damage, which I later realized was like, oh shoot, that was a terrible idea. That was a terrible idea. No, it was 12d10. It was 2d10 per fireball. So I mean 12d10. I mean that's a murder thing. You're dead. You take some serious damage from 12d10. So I was like, oh shoot, lesson learned. I was like, everyone was like, that kills me. I was like, divide the damage by 2. Divide the damage by 2. I'm sorry guys, I'm sorry. Divide the damage by 2. And they all did, and they were hurt. They weren't dead, but they were hurt. And I was like, okay, sorry guys, that was my bad. That was my bad, I'm sorry. And they all kind of were like, all right, it's Peter. So they move on, they come to the altar at the end, and they pull the sword out, like, you know, master swords down. They said, the altar explodes into oblivion, and in its place is this gray, feathery mass, and everyone's like, oh my gosh. Everyone's kind of freaking out. Sonya's like, oh cool, I got this sun blade. She drew the sword. She's like, I got this cool sun sword. And everyone's like, but like after this altar explosion, everyone's like, oh snap, boss time. And it's this angel. It's called a diva. It's like this, yeah, it's like it's this angel, and it like, I had to go crazy, because what it had is it stands up, and it immediately like grows up, and in telepathy, it goes up to Sonya, and like in her face goes, why? It just starts screaming at her like, why? How do I know you won't lie to me? And everyone's like, you can see my mind, you know my thoughts. And I realized like, oh shoot, I said something wrong. I was supposed to say some other things that were going to make it so that Angel was kind of working for Fritzolas the Lich as a guardian kind of thing. I was convinced that yeah, and some things, but then I realized, oh shoot, it's got telepathy. I said some wrong things, so it knows their thoughts, so it knows that's a lie. So I later said, the thing's crazy. I was like, the thing is insane, Sonya. And at that point, she's like, well, shoot, can we heal its insanity? I was like, Galen, who's a high-level wizard, even though he's a revenant, he's a high-level wizard. He knows a spell, Greater Restoration, which can heal infinite madness. So I said, Galen goes up with his one, like, 5th level spell. He goes up, he grabs the diva on the head like a Vulcan mind meld, and he says, be at peace, Angel. And he thrusts its head back, and everyone, like, is like, oh my gosh, Galen! Who's really done nothing for most of the adventure. He stood back, he didn't do much for the fight against the 8 whites. And they left him at the hut as they'd gone key hunting. So he hasn't done much. He goes up and basically in his first real move, he heals the diva's madness. And at this point, we ended the session. So now the diva is healed. So now we'll see if they decide to take the diva with them or if they decide to leave the diva. I mean, they got the loot that was right behind them after killing a mimic. And I guess the lesson to be learned here from this session was flexibility. One encounter kind of got screwed up. I screwed up with my one encounter with the whole Lich's living quarters, so I have to be flexible, and you just put it later on, so you can still have it without railroading your players. So, once again, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for, hang on, fingers are getting tired, sorry. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned some lessons. Comments below, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.